Happy Saturday to everybody. Rob Mazak here. I am a psychic medium, and I wanted to discuss in this podcast tonight a little bit about aliens. Well, maybe a lot of bit about aliens. And the reason I am going to actually talk about that is I have a student, if you will, somebody that I've been mentoring for a little bit. And we had a conversation today about her experience with meeting aliens basically face to face. I say face to face, but in her purview of her eyesight, if you will, not within her consciousness or in her mind, but actually seeing them with her own eyes, if you will. And the story in short was she was meditating outside and like 2 o'clock in the morning or something because she was told by her guides to do that. And so in the process, she felt like somebody was watching her. And eventually she opened her eyes, and there in front of her was, she described very tall, slender, big-headed entities with very strange eyes. And they were kind of like, almost like a hologram, I think, the way she described it. But kind of coming in and out of this existence, this reality, if you will. And they kept pointing up to the sky behind her, or upwards behind her. And so she eventually looked, and there was a craft, a spacecraft as she describes it, that was hovering above her apartment or wherever she lives. I mean, I don't know where she lives, but I believe it's an apartment. And anyway, so we had a long conversation about that. And I think it's because she was a little concerned and wanted to make sure that it was strange way to say this, it was normal. And she wasn't really losing her mind, if you will. And she's been on a very hardcore spiritual journey, if you will, as of recent. And so a lot of strange things are happening to her, but she's trying to work through what makes sense and to make sure she's not really just imagining things. But what's interesting about her story is that it's pretty normal in my world, for me, in a couple ways. So I had spent some time reviewing information by Dr. Stephen Greer, for example, who uses a very specific meditation and practice to create connection, a peaceful connection to the alien or alien entities that are out there, quote unquote, and are basically out of our sense of sight, if you will, for very good reason, because apparently now we can detect them and shoot them down, I guess. And anyway, that's the story. So, in the way he describes it was very much like this experience that my student was having, that they only uncloak, if you will, or it's just sort of like Star Trek, right? Where you can cloak and uncloak, where you can kind of disappear from other people's perception of you, although you're still there. I guess that might be the best way to describe it. So Star Trek, movies like that, they talk about that a lot. And so my understanding through Dr. Greer and then some of my experience, what I'll talk about is that this is actuality, and that this actually does happen, because those that lie outside of this reality, whatever it is, right? There's got to be others. There's just no way around it. If the universe is what we have been taught that it is, billions and billions and billions and billions of galaxies and planets, and it'd be a really big waste of space if there was nobody else out there. So I believe that there is, and I believe they are interacting with us. And you can there's lots and lots of stories, even though stories are getting harder and harder to believe these days because there's just as much disinformation as there is information or true information. And so, that's okay. But I do believe that other species do interact with us. And it would make sense. Because if there are really high level beings out there, very high level of technology compared to us, then we would be almost like looking at an experiment of beings that are evolving into what they are currently. And so I think we all, us as a human species, has the ability to go that distance. Will we make it? I don't know. It's been many stories of times when we've reached very high levels of technology and then suddenly we're gone, whatever that means. But everybody's gone. They just disappear. So were we on the same track? I don't know. Another topic of discussion for a podcast. However, I do believe, though, that the stories that Dr. Stephen Greer brings forth about his own experience and all the people he brings out in groups to do this very thing have these experiences just like that, where if you, in his words, if you make peaceful contact, peaceful and loving contact, that they will come. They want to show themselves to us. They want us to know that they're there. And, personally, I'm glad that they are, because to be honest, if us humans on this little bitty speck of a planet in the grand dimension of this universe is all there is, then we are in trouble, right? I hope there's something out there. Someone, something, somebody, however you want to say that. I really do hope there's something out. So, anyway, that's just my opinion. But she wanted me to actually share my experiences and thought it might be a good thing to share with everybody else, because just like I told her, if you sharing these stories out to others on the internet and across the globe, which is what the internet's all about, right? Who needs a big stage when you have one in your living room? Just get on a mic. Here you are. If you share these kind of things out there with the rest of the world, maybe somebody else out there, other people that have had experiences, won't feel so strange and so weird. And it will help them, understand that they're probably normal, just like the rest of us, right? Now, I mean, when I grew up in the, 60s, 70s, I was born in 1960. And so, of course, this phenomenon has been going on for quite a while. And most recently began in our, it began in our recent history in 1947-ish, right? Roswell time and some others, but all through our known history written down, it's all over the place. But in my time, you did not talk about this stuff. You would get your butt beat, right, as a kid, as being some strange freak. But now it's pretty normal. Now it's pretty well accepted. I think everybody knows that there's something out there. Some people have experiences, some don't. And so I personally have not had any physical beings show up as of yet, right? Most of the interaction I have with entities outside of this reality happen in my consciousness. And it doesn't dim down the validity or quality of connection. It's just different. It's different for me, right? Some people can see them, like they're right in front of you talking to a friend, but not for me so much. But the only time, no, let me take that back. There's 2 times when I've had physical evidence that they probably exist, right? None of this is being offered up as proof. It's just, it's truth for me anyway. So I was stationed in El Del Rio, running a base camp over there when they had a bunch of migrants trying to cross the bridge. If you guys remember that a few years back. Anyway, I had wanted to use a gym facility. So being a retired guy, I went over to the Air Force Base there in town and utilized that facility. And one night after work, I went to work out, and as I was leaving to take a left onto the main highway heading back, there to my right was a very large triangle craft, is the best way I can put it, with lights on the bottom. Which, to me, lights seems like a very strange thing for any alien civilization to have. If you have that much technology, I don't know what you need lights for. However, anyway, and I thought I was seeing things, and anyway, I stared at it for, I don't know, it seemed like 10, 15 seconds, and the guy behind me started beeping the horn. I'm like, all right. So I turned left onto the highway, and I could see it on my mirror until, of course, it disappeared over the horizon as I got down the road. And as soon as I got back to my room, my hotel room, I started researching if anybody had reported any UFOs. I mean, it was by an Air Force base, for goodness sake. You think if nothing else, it'd be a security thing to report. But I couldn't find it anywhere on any channels, any news channels, alternative news websites, nothing, right? Couldn't find it. So I kind of settled into the fact that this was only there for me to witness. You know, why? I don't know. Maybe it was just time to validate for me that all the things I've been hearing and believing, or begin to believe, I should say, were actually true. And what I do find, though, is that a lot of times when people have these occurrences, that it's not always happening to a large audience. It may just be for a couple people, or even a single person, or a couple, or right. And so it made a lot of sense for me. So I was totally accepting of it. And the interesting thing, the other example I should say, is a couple of years before that, I had been stationed in Laredo, Texas, that is, for part of my COVID deployment, and staying in a hotel. And I remember coming out of my hotel room. I had parked the vehicle that I was driving in the back, and I came out and I wrote a story about it. It's on my blog, but there spread across the building behind me was obviously sunlight was reflecting off of something. At least that's what I can gather. Across the building in huge, I'll call them letters, characters, symbols, were what looked like symbols I'd seen from recovered parts of the Roswell UFO crash, or supposed Roswell UFO crash. And I couldn't help myself, right? And so I went and took pictures of it, and it was there for 3 days in a row. And then it suddenly disappeared. It was gone. And I remember going on the other side of the fence and to see, where is this coming from? And I could not figure out where it was coming from. And I'm not saying it wasn't something, just random, but I like I said, I couldn't help myself. So I decided I was going to try to figure out if I could find somebody that could help me translate these symbols. And I managed to find somebody that was a quote unquote expert in alien symbology and had been very involved since the Roswell incident. And the reason I thought it was maybe from alien beings, if you will, or from something like the Roswell incident, is because I had been recently researching the Roswell crash for some reason. I don't know why. I'll periodically run into it and, hey, this is cool. Let me look at it again. And so I thought there was something to it. I believe everything I get, and what we all get, is not simple coincidence. It's all synchronicity, right? And so I sent my stuff, my pictures to this guy, and at first he said that it was. At first he said that these were not symbols or symbology from the Roswell crash, as I thought they were. And so I kind of like, okay, well maybe this is just some random thing. But then he came back later, like I think even the next day, and he goes, but I was able to relook at that stuff, and he did translate it for me. Right off the top of my head, I don't remember what it said, but that's not really what's important. But I was able to take that message and then meditate on it further, and got further guidance, right? And so for me, it was a lot of validation. But I don't remember anybody else bringing it up. Nobody talking about these strange markings on this building for those 3 days. You'd think somebody would have said something or brought it up. Of course I did. But everybody looked at me like I had 3 eyes. But that's okay. But I really do think that there are others out there. And like I said before, there's got to be. And I hope there is. Because if we're just floating a little speck in the middle of nothing, based on the size of the universe as we supposedly know it, and all we got is us and this little bit of resources on this speck, we could be in real trouble, right? So I really do hope that there is somebody else out there, not as a savior per se, but having that outside influence and guidance as we evolve as humans is very important. And so just like, let's go back to the Star Trek idea, right? And so one of the things they talk about there is non-interference with civilizations that they stumble across that are maybe in their infancy or whatever progression they're in. And the rule of the Star Trek Academy or fleet, however they put it, is that you don't interfere. You don't go down and decide that they need to learn how to make fire because they haven't discovered it yet. You don't go down and teach them about religion. You just don't go and interfere. You allow them to actually figure those things out. However, there's my understanding, at least with the movies, is that there's nothing wrong with influencing them indirectly, right? You can go down and be as one of them and work from the inside out, if you will. Sort of like the Avatar movie, right? You can enter a world and appear to be like everybody else and influence people that way. And for some reason that's not considered interference. So I guess that makes sense. And I do see that in other ways, of course. But even through my hypnosis practice, the quantum healing hypnosis technique, the one that Dolores Cannon pioneered, and, she, over the 40 plus years that she was doing sessions, she heard that a lot, that civilizations outside of this earth could not directly go down and impact us as we evolve as humans. However, what they could do is energetically, for lack of a better word, sprinkle ideas into the atmosphere, I think, as she put it, and see who catches it, see who figures out that this new invention should be introduced to the population, and they get the credit, of course, of inventing it. But in a lot of ways, that's the same thing as it just came to me, right? Where does that come from? It could simply just be something that got turned loose within us, but it could also be that outside influence, right? It could be other beings, other entities that are out there. And in my belief system, through my research and reading and whatever else that I've been doing on all this for a long time, reading, Sitchin's books about, Planet X and all these things, right? That there really are, in my opinion, this is my opinion, that there are multiple sources of realms, places where entities can come from or reside in and come over and integrate with us, influence us through many different ways. I mean, there are ideas of parallel universes, right? There are ideas of multiple dimensions. There are ideas of, I said parallel universes already, right? But anyway, you get my point. The thing is that in my opinion, in my research, and based on what I have developed as my truth, is that there is just a tremendous amount of entities that can come from all kinds of places, if you will, within our own universe, outside of our dimension, crossover from other universes, and just, in a lot of ways, I think they're watching us. It's almost like we become this experiment, and like an ant farm or something, where we simply are put in this place and given some kind of boundaries and rules, and in a place where we can't escape from, and left to our own accord to figure it out. But at the same time, there seems to be some empathy towards us in our, as we evolve as humans, to give us little breadcrumbs to follow, to become, more like them, if you will, right? And so I don't know. Anyway, these are kind of some ideas and some stories about my experiences. I've also interacted with, what I would consider to be the Galactic Council. Once again, I'm not offering this as proof, but I've had conversations with the head of that council and learned some things that I've discovered to be truths, if you will, or validation for what is happening, what's going to happen, and has happened since I've heard it. And they describe themselves as those that are just watching. And they're trying to influence from outside because of that non-interference clause. And so that makes a lot of sense, right? But I also know that my understanding through Dr. Stephen Greer and my own experience, which I'll tell you about in a second, that the governments, those in power in this planet, can now tell when you are communicating outside of this reality. I'm not sure how they know that, but I have kind of a personal story on that really helps validate that, at least for me. I was working with a client for a while that, by all accounts, through her story, if there's alien hybrids on this planet, she would be one of them, right? And so most people think she's batshit crazy. And, I kind of thought that way for a while myself. But based on her story of interactions with UFOs and entities and aliens throughout her whole life, I decided, I'm going to go and seek out those who are, quote unquote, doing this, right? That are manipulating her. And so sat down in meditation, and I connected with this interesting race or group of aliens, kind of reptilian in nature, and I brought my spirit guide with me, Angel, very cool. Anyway, we had this long conversation back and forth with that group, and I was kind of trying to work out a deal, if you will, for them to kind of slow down and back off of her so that she could, live, somewhat of a normal life. And I thought that we had a pretty good agreement, and I felt like it went well, and didn't see any problems with it. And anyway, I got done with all that and decided to pop in the shower and, getting ready for bed and all that stuff. And I got this very strong voice in my head, which it's a different voice than I hear when I'm connecting with entities, those that have on the other side or outside of this reality, however you want to look at that. Completely different. And it was a very strong message that I had no right, no authority to work any contractual agreements on behalf of other humans. That contracts have been worked out for these things that are going on with humans between, I'm not sure who between, but contracts and agreements have been worked out so that, I guess the best way to say that is experiments and things could be done, with certain humans, in a certain percentage of humans, and that I would cease to do that. That if I didn't, that things would turn out really badly for me. And so I went back and re-looked at some of Dr. Greer's stuff, and he said the very same things when he was starting out early on, that he did get those type of direct messages from those that live here in this current reality, just like I did. But even further for him, they would come knocking on his door, the black suits, right? And so I kind of backed down for a while on that. But so anyway, true to my word, I told my student I would share some of these things and talk about it a little bit. I kind of hopped around and went all over the place, but I think you get the point. I think based on my experiences, my research, and other people's stories and clients that I've had over all these years, I do believe there's others out there, and that they are very much influencing our world, interacting with our world in very much secrecy, or very secret, because my understanding is now, though, that we can detect them now, and with the technology we currently have, we can shoot them down, take them out. And so if that's really true, that would explain why they come in a cloaked way and they don't reveal themselves unless those that they are appearing to have that pure and peaceful heart, and they know that they're going to be safe in that respect. So if they do appear to you, I would tell you that you are one of the ones that have that kind and peaceful heart, and you are worthy to see them, to experience them. So don't take it as a bad thing. At least that's my opinion. And so, anyway, I will end this podcast on that note. I would like to hear your comments and your stories and your experiences. So you can reach out to me. You can find my contact information on my website, lifebymazak.com, LIFEBYMAZAK.com. I will talk to you soon.